I hope that was a blessing. I hope that it's setting things straight. Don't let your translations mess you up, because that's what's really messing people up. And by the way, as much as I like the ISR book, and I use it, and I've been using it since pretty much since 98 when it came out, okay, because this is a 98 one, it's some places it has not helped, okay? And a lot of the other Hebrew roots translations make the same mistake. They put Torah in where it doesn't belong, okay? Law should be left the word law so you can figure out which law it's referring to. And don't let the translator decide for you which law it's referring to, because the Greek doesn't do that. Same thing with spirit. Just putting spirit everywhere, that already confuses things. So we need to understand that it's talking about a nature. Now, maybe you don't want the translator to choose which one it's talking about, but you should understand when you see that it's referring to the nature of something, okay? The spirit of something is its essence, it's its intrinsic nature, it's all of its characteristics. The spirit of. So when someone's filled with joy, the spirit of joy, they are embodying, and you look at them, they're the embodiment of all the characteristics of joy. It's just flowing out of them. Love, peace, pain, whatever it is. You see anger, okay? Frustration, impatience. Those are also things that we get to be in the spirit of when we're embracing and exemplifying all of the characteristics of that nature. Okay, you can see somebody that's mildly frustrated. You can see somebody that it's who they are at that moment. They are frustration. Okay, it is fully embodied their nature at that moment. There are people you walk by and you think, well, I think maybe you might be frustrated. You want to go over, are you frustrated at the moment because you need help with something? There's other people, everybody knows they're frustrated because that's who they are at that moment. They are the fullness of embodiment of that essence. And that could be good or bad. You can choose to have the essence of one of the aspects of the fruit. There are 9 aspects. You can embrace and embody any one of them at your choosing. But I just remember, those 9 aspects are only there when you are submissive to the Ruach Elohim nature, the spirit of Elohim, the nature of Elohim. They're only there when things are challenging under that nature. You can have them in the fleshly nature anytime. The flesh can choose to just have tons of joy doing things it should not do. Tons of, just fill in, they can be totally kind to the totally wrong people in the wrong way. That nature is going to determine, under the circumstance, how you and when you choose to be joyful and loving, etc. Because I've had people say, well, I got the fruit of the Spirit. I'm loving and joyful and blah, blah, blah. Really? Can you love your enemy? Do you have joy in your trials, like James says in chapter 1? That takes a different nature. Okay? When you can choose. Not one that gets forced on you. When you can choose to submit to. But because there is a spirit that was given to you, that spirit has all of the pieces that you need of the nature if you would just submit yourself to it. Okay? It'll stir to remembrance everything you need, but you're going to have to eat of the blood and eat of the bread. In other words, you're going to have to put it in. You're going to have to take the words and stick them in. You're going to have to eat of it. And by the way, that means that it goes through a digestive system and it becomes a part of your body. All right? Okay? Now, what you need to do, since the body, when it eats, also eliminates, you need to eliminate all that stuff that doesn't belong in your system. All the wrong teachings, wrong thoughts, wrong ideas need to be eliminated. When you eat of the good stuff, nothing ever gets eliminated. It all just becomes part of you. There's no waste. There's no toxins. See, that stuff all has to be eliminated when we eat food because there's all this stuff in there that doesn't really belong in your body. All right, so this is the afterburn. I guess I already started. So if you have a comment or question, you go ahead and raise your hand here and the mic will come around. If you're on live stream, did Robert walk away from the desk? Well, he'll get there eventually. Oh, here he comes. All right, so Robert will kind of get your stuff. Okay, Frederick's coming to get the mic.
I had a thought while you were teaching that...
You had a thought while I was teaching?
Yeah, several thoughts.
On thinking?
Yes, exactly. I was thinking of like Mission Impossible or various missions that certain groups do that they're going to be separate from each other, but they have to come back together at a local point to get out. They always do this, synchronized watches, to make sure they're all in the same time. And I was thinking how that matches with what you're saying. We need to synchronize ourselves, everything about us, with his way and what he wants done. And what we do that by taking his word in us, and that's what helps to synchronize our watches, changing our nature from our nature to his nature.
Okay.
I also was noticing
Just remember, though, that this message will not just self-destruct in 10 seconds.
Yes, I understand. But I was also noticing that it seems very clear that the word is actually the spirit. The Tanakh, in essence, is the spirit.
It's the nature of Elohim.
Yeah.
It expresses all the characteristics you need to know about him. Okay? I'm shocked. The microphone went from brother to sister again. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay.
I think I might like Paul now.
Paul's just misunderstood.
I know you said multiple different times that this fruit of the Spirit is the higher, the loving your enemy. But between the love languages and my work as a nanny, you have to teach every single, even that human basic, that no child knows how to love without the parent or caregiver teaching them. They're not gentle. They're not self-controlled. They have no patience. So that even our nature born with, we don't have any of this. Even though there is a societally accepted, would it be natural to say or good to say that we have to be taught it on every level, even though there is that higher level?
Absolutely. All of what you do, okay, is a combination of some just unique, personal preferences, but really what you've learned culturally through your life and the people you interacted with and what you read. And you know what? You are the sum of all your inputs, okay? Who you hang out with, what you listen to, what you watch, what you eat, what you hear. Okay, this is who you are now. You didn't get here by just not having any influences. There were influences. Now, there are some things, though, that are uniquely you as to how you take those influences and how much of it you embraced and which parts of it you embraced and how you responded, because you could take two children who are brother and sister and have them raised in the same place, and they will not be exactly the same in every way. They will not respond to things exactly the same, but they will have had certain things that they will have much more in common because of their common experience. And so, absolutely.
And just a comment, it worked in my head. Families look alike and act alike. And like you talking about inheriting, sons and daughters inherit.
Amen. Look, if you are, old enough or young enough that you can remember at least once in your life someone saying, "You're just like your father," or "You're just like your mother," or someone saying about your children, "Oh, they're just like you." And always it seems to happen when it wasn't something good either, but, "Oh, he's just like you," or "She's just like you." That could be tough. And here's the funny part, you can't see it either. I'm going to embarrass my wife without embarrassing her, but there was times when my child was young, my daughter, and she said to me, "Why is she like that?" I go, "Because she's you." But she couldn't see that because you could see it in other people. But other people can see both, and they can see. So hopefully when they look at us, what did Yeshua say to Thomas? He said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." Right? So what's your problem? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Well, if when people see us, do they see Yeshua? Do they see the Father? They should. Or do they see your fleshly side of the parentage? Because if you're going to claim Abba Father, then that's now a parentage. That's a parenting line. Do you look like and act like and give people the idea that you have a descendancy through this Father, the one above? Or is it only that they see the people that they know to be your physical parents? That's something we should really think about. Craig.
Yes, maybe you could help me clarify some of my thoughts. I don't recall the exact conversation where the lead poisoning thing was brought up, but I strongly feel like I was absolutely led to move my family here, and looking at a room full of 20 or so people that, I think given different circumstances, were also led to move from various parts of the country to here, and understandably that's not what everybody's been given to do, but could you just help kind of, because I think that's
Yeah, good
where
point.
that basic conversation was brought up in the lead poisoning thing that.
No, the lead poisoning thing wasn't brought up in the context of that, but I know who brought it up. I know when it was mentioned. It was funny. But when we talk about being led, okay, and feeling led, it's when we compare what we're being led to do with his word. So his word says to not forsake assembling together. His word says he's gathering his people. You also know in your life what you need to walk this out, and to change your nature is much easier to do in a place where you're with other people doing the same thing. So feeling led to be there is certainly something I could say, and I could validate because it's consistent with the book. It's when people feel led to do things that are not consistent with the book that we have to be careful with that led thing, all right? However, being led, the fruit is what bears it out. I'll give you an example. There was a situation where I did something for somebody, and later that somebody decided to go off in a whole different direction, and I said, I did this and I did that for you. And the person yelled at me and said, oh, so you're going to steal, Elohim's glory, that it wasn't him who did all of this. I said, the fruit right now is looking like it was me, because it wasn't bearing the good fruit if it was him. So I'm not sure who was behind my feeling led to bring that person and move them to this area and whatever was done. But I said, look, right at this point, it's looking a whole lot more like it was me and not him, because the fruit is not showing it. But you can't always know that in the moment. You could get counsel, and maybe the counsel person can see it more clearly than you. Or the counsel person, as I've done often, may say, we'll just have to see and let it play out. And it's playing it out that will help you know which way it was. Because it's hard to know until it plays out, then you see the fruit. Okay? So I can feel very good that when people are moving here for this, that if they said they felt led to do it, I can certainly understand why their flesh would want it, because there's a need, even in man, to want what we're able to provide here. And for the Ruach to be behind that as well, there's a congruence that could certainly be there. But we also have to then see what happens. We've had other people move here that it didn't work out so good, because guess what? They weren't wanting to actually move here for what here is. In other words, what we're offering. And so when they got here and it really wasn't here, they left. I mean, we've had some people be here for a very short while. 1 or 2 families, a couple of weeks, and then went back where they came. Jobs didn't open up. The fruit wasn't there. And I'm not even saying because we did anything as a congregation. They just came here, and being here in all of its normal things like jobs and career and all that didn't work out. Okay? There are others of you I know on live stream would love to be here right now, but those doors haven't opened either. So when you say, yeah, you feel led to want to be here, well, part of that's flesh. But it's by the way, not every thought of flesh is wrong. Okay, but you got to remember that it has to be judged against the measuring stick of Elohim's nature. All right? Before you even knew about Elohim and Torah and all those other things, you still might have gone to help an old lady take packages out of her car, or help somebody do something that, you see somebody needs help, hold the door for somebody, whatever, doing kindnesses, nice things. Because you were raised to do those things. And those things are the right things to do. It doesn't necessarily mean because you're embracing and choosing a nature. Okay? I know a bunch of people that are not seeking Torah and Elohim or anything from this book. They're just living life, and some of them are really great people. And they have really good fleshly natures. Their fleshly natures are very generous and very kind, and all. We all know people like that. But to your question, first of all, I'm glad that you were led here. We like having you here, okay? And it's borne some good fruit, and you've been able to get settled in and get, work and everything else, and that's great, okay? But really, it's when you're feeling led, but the book doesn't say it. Or like the person who says, well, Elohim just gave me this, opened up this door for me to have a job that works on Saturday, but it pays twice as much as I get now. So obviously he wants me to work on Saturday. Well, no, maybe he didn't open the door. Okay? He allowed it to see what you do. But the flesh, the nature problem is how we label things. When we decide to label it us or him, we have to be really careful. Because we don't want to say something's him when it's not. That's worse than saying something's not him when it is. Okay? Don't say something's him when it's not.
Kind of like where you were saying that there's a lot of good people out there that aren't necessarily doing this at all. I think I've told you about one of the guys in my unit. We nicknamed Mongo. His actual religion is Viking. Would it be wrong to learn or get advice from him about stuff? Just because I know I've heard from mostly on the YouTube teachers. It's like, well, if you're learning anything from someone who's not doing this, that's wrong. And
No, look, I don't need to have somebody be a believer, quote unquote, Torah observant, etc., to teach me how to fix my car or how to, make something or do something. I'm saying I don't need them to be completely in this. They may be able to teach me about all kinds of things. I don't want them teaching me about life decisions. Okay? I'm not looking for a life coach that's not here, grounded in the book. But if I want somebody to teach me how to do something that I want to learn how to do, play an instrument or do something mechanically or have some sort of skill, I don't need to worry about where their nature is, as long as they're expert at the skill and can teach that expertise to me. I don't know, no matter to me what their belief system is. But when they're going to teach me how to live, how to walk in life, no. So I'm not going to get counsel and mentoring life-wise from someone who's not here, okay? So it just depends on what you're looking for, all right? My daughter's at a point now where I need to get her a voice coach and a keyboard. She needs some teachers, okay, because her teacher wants to pass her on to new teachers. And I'm not going to screen them first to find out if they're Torah observant. I'm going to screen them first to make sure they're actually good at what they do and teaching what they do to her. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
it wasn't one of the questions that I had from him. I just kind of gleaned from what he was telling someone else in the group. It was like, it was less about how to live your spiritual life, because again, he's Viking, and one of the things that he's like is like, there's a lot of different beliefs in the Viking religion stuff. What you need to do is learn how to take your religion beliefs and make it work with what you're doing here. And I mean, if it's not, then do something else. And it was just like, that's like good general spiritual advice for whatever, but.
Well, it might be, but what you need to have, and again, I've said this to all of you, you need to have a mentoring discipler that you go and ask and say, I was just taught this, is this good or bad? Like the mentor who raised his hand with the bald head back here, who's also known as your father, okay? See, that's where you may want to talk to him about what this other guy just told you. Okay, but I'm just saying is, when you get stuff, it still may be good, but you won't be sure until you go and check it with the person who has a relationship with you and has a vested interest in your success. Okay? So go get yourself that person. Robert?
Yeah, I just have to comment on one thing, and that is there's a very key element to your question. You don't fit what you're doing into Scripture. I mean, you don't fit the Scripture into what you're doing. You fit what you're doing into what the Scripture teaches.
Exactly.
Not the other way.
Exactly. Okay? But that's why you would bring what you have to someone like your father, okay, who's not only your father, he's also a shamash here in the congregation, and you would run that by him to make sure that you're gleaning it correctly, like you're understanding it and knowing whether or not it's something to take into your system. We do have people here that I work with who do that on a regular basis. Something comes up, and they'll contact me, say, this came up, what am I supposed to do with it? Is it safe? Is it problematic? Whatever. Okay? Fine. Again, this should not be cultishly understood. You don't all have to come to me. You can come to me if you are in that relationship. What I'm saying is, but if you have somebody already, then you need to have that person. Go back to Ephesians 4, those fivefold ministry guys. Find them. Okay? And if you found them, use them. Some of you don't use us like you should. And we find out stuff you're doing, and we bang our heads going, why won't they just call? Robert and I and Rabbi Tom, we all do that all the time. Why? Because they'll call me up and say, have you talked to so-and-so about this, this, this? Nope. Really? Nope. Have they called you? Nope. It's not my job to call you. Oh, but you're busy. Stop saying that. It's true, but who cares? Okay? Stop using that as an excuse. You all use that rabbi's busy excuse. Knock that off. The ones of you that don't use the excuse, find that when you call, I'm there. All right? And so just, it's an excuse. Admit it, call it what it is. You're trying to justify that you don't want to do it. So you use the, well, I knew you were busy excuse. What do you think I'm busy doing? Helping somebody else just like you. So you're not good enough for that? They're more worthy than you? They're more valuable in some way? They deserve it more than you do? What do you think I'm busy doing? Most of the day, helping somebody else just like you. So why shouldn't it be you? Silly. This is foolishness. Where's the mic? All right, live stream.
Before I go to the questions on the live stream, do want to let you know that we did hit 466 on the live stream today.
Wow. Hit those subscribe buttons.
So almost half of them have hit like. So
there you go.
There are several people who have asked about the
10,106. It has gone up a lot. Just saying.
There are several who have asked about the Ruach.
I'm sorry, my wife thinks it's funny when we do that.
I've directed them to call during the week because their questions are kind of specific to them. But there is a common thread that you may want to go ahead and address, and that is the question about the Ruach and the Spirit and all this stuff and understanding it is how to explain it to their Christian friends and family members and get them to understand it and come on board.
You can't. No, you can't. What you can do is give them, if they really want to know, the understanding of the Ruach teaching. Because I cover this pretty well in that teaching, okay? But you can't. See, this is, okay. This is the flesh. The flesh wants them to get it. The flesh, you love them, you care about them. And even if you don't love them and care about them, you want them to stop driving you crazy. At the very minimum. So you need them to get it. So you don't have to keep arguing about this stuff. But what did we read in John? He says, but no one can come unless the Father opens their eyes and their ears, etc. He's got to do that. You can't. You can try, but if you want to try, go listen to, I don't know how many parts that was. What, Understanding the Ruach, how many parts? 6, 7, 8, 7, 8? 8. All right? All right? Just go back and listen to that. If you can get to, remember the 4 levels of understanding that I teach. You understand it, you can do it, you can defend it. Last level is teach it. Listen to it as many times as you have to so you can do that. Then you can talk to your friends. And then you'll realize how quickly they don't want to talk to you about it, and then you'll realize it was a waste of time. I'm just trying to save you the step, okay? But you still should be listening to it so you can do those 4 things. Because at some point, Abba will draw somebody in your direction that is interested and ready and open. And you should be able to share that with them. By the way, it's much easier just to hand them the CD and say, here. Or send them a link and say, listen to this. I mean, if you have somebody, you know, it's kind of like, how do I explain this? If I've already invented, it's like reinventing the wheel. If I've already done the wheel thing, why not just give them that? It doesn't, by the way, mean less of you that you can't do it yourself. Well, why would you not just hand out something if you already think it's done well? You know? It's like, now that our children are older, I have to turn to my wife sometimes and say, why are you doing that? That's why we have children. I'm not saying that in an insulting way, but that's their thing. If you have somebody that's their thing to do, there's things that I do. And I'll say to the children, why are you doing that? I need to do that, or until I teach you how to do that, etc. Let the person who's skilled at it, who's already really great at it, do the heavy lifting. All right? Why would you do the thing when it's already easy enough to say, here's a link, here's a CD? Because guess what? Once you start teaching it, and if you mess it up, it's on you. If you end up confusing them and causing them a stumble or whatever, the teacher has the double judgment. Don't be so quick. Oh, you guys think this is like look at that, he's up on screen and he's famous or this or that. I want to be all of that. Really? You want all that responsibility and burden and all that judgment? You don't know what you're asking for. You just don't. You know, you guys, all the guys out there want to start your own little congregations. You don't know what you're asking for. You have no idea. Because you know what? And don't be insulted. But in the job, you're going to have to deal with people. Not easy to do. All right? It makes the job tough. The pastor who did my wedding said to me when I asked him about getting into ministry, he said it would be the absolute best job, most perfect, ultimately. It would be perfect if we could just figure out how to get the people out of it. That's what he said to me. He said, as a matter of fact, it'd be perfect. We could just figure out how to get the people out of it. But it's a people thing. This is what we do. We work with people. And people are hard to work with. Okay? Because not only are they messed up, they don't take correction easily and well. Not at all. So you think you're going to be all popular on YouTube and stuff, but you're going to have a whole lot of people throwing stuff at you, trust me. Robert, go ahead.
All right, I just have 3 actually that I've copied over. From Yanni, Romans 8:16, the nature himself bears witness with our nature that we are children of Elohim. His sheep know his voice of his nature, connect in our nature, and we walk in his path.
All right, so what Yanni likes to do, good job, Yanni. Not always easy to change anything into English. I mean, Yanni lives in Denmark. But she likes to take what I've said and try to actually she's connecting 4 other things I said all together. The sheep know the voice and the following, etc., to see how that all connects together. And good job. It wasn't as easy to follow in the way you typed it in English, but I understood what you were saying, and hopefully everybody else did. And for Yanni, it's like, I don't know, 3 in the morning or something, or 4 in the morning at this point, at least. So, moving the clocks ahead helped. I think she's now starts services at like 1 in the morning instead of 3 or 2, whatever. But now we're 3 hours later, so it's probably like 4 already in the morning for her. That's commitment, okay? And she comes to the Bible studies, and those are starting at 8 o'clock at night, which is just keep going forward with the hours, okay? It's actually, no, so this one, for us now, should be like 10 o'clock at night for her. Yeah. It's the Bible studies that start at like 2 in the morning for her, 1 in the morning. Too, yeah. Okay, because it's going forward about 5 or 6 hours for Denmark time.
Yeah.
Robert?
All right, from Adrian and Patricia Bogle. It appears the Greek word nomos is used for the word law and Torah similar to English. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But the thing is, it's used for the word law, which could mean anything.
Right.
Anything law. It could be any kind of law. It doesn't have to mean that it's always referring to, You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be referring to Torah. And that's really the, Denmark time, 9:30 p.m. right now. So it's 5 hours. Isn't Google great? So just realize that when you're looking at your translations, if you're not going to get into the Greek or the Hebrew, you're going to have some struggles. Because even as I went through it, I said, you know what? He used spirit like 15 times, and he's not referring to the same thing every time. He used law like 15 times, and he's not referring to the same thing every time. All in the matter of 7 or 8 verses. Sometimes more than once in the same verse. And even in there, he's not referring to the same thing. And so when you go to the Greek and realize that because it says Torah in here, doesn't mean that it actually said Torah in Greek. It's the translator decided to put in Torah because they thought, as they always do, and this is nothing to attack, they thought they were helping. The people that made the NIV, one of the worst translations, thought they were helping. And so that's where we have to be really careful. All right? So that's why I gave you an alternate translation understanding to see if that would make more sense without destroying what it actually said. Okay? And there are going to be people out there attacking me saying, oh, he's rewriting the stuff and it doesn't say that and blah, blah, blah. I got people doing that with the divorce and remarriage teaching, even though I showed them the Greek and the Hebrew and what it actually said. They still don't want to listen. Because in English it says divorce. Even though the Greek doesn't say that and the Hebrew doesn't say that, but who's going to believe the underwriting language? Oh, let's just believe the English. You can't win. I can't tell you how many YouTube comments I have from that video where people say, but it says God hates divorce. But it doesn't say that. But they can't receive that. And then they'll go, well, what about here in Matthew? I said, I spent half an hour on that. But they did listen, but they couldn't hear through the filter. The filter was so strong from the way they were raised, they could not receive. And you got to ask yourself, what am I not receiving because my filters are still too thick, too strong, and I can't get the truth through it? That's a really good question that you need to ask yourself. Robert, go ahead.
From MTOI Lakeview, Romans 8:11. So the one who has Torah is risen to everlasting life. So in contrast, the one without Torah, one who has lived by the law of death, is risen to death.
Not risen, it's just death, okay? Okay, look, we read this in multiple places. We read it in Matthew, and we read it, in John, and we read it in Romans, that it leads to, I think Galatians said it too, it leads to death. The other one leads to eternal life. It doesn't say it leads to eternal death, just death. Okay? All of us have had things die, all right? You've had pets die. That's it. They're dead. That leads to death. The alternative is eternal life. You must have Elohim's nature to have that. Amen? Okay?
All right, one more was added. From Leanne, question, John 4:24. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Is this saying Elohim is essence only, or that we must worship him, or we must worship from the same mindset as his nature?
I believe I'm going to say yes to the second part of that. I didn't follow the whole thing. Let me look at the verse. Okay. Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in the spirit and truth. Okay. So we have to go further back earlier, okay, when he talks about how in verse 23 that now is when it says the time is coming and now is when true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. Remember, we said that in that case, the word spirit's being used as the fullness of how it was intended. He's saying Elohim is the embodiment of the fullness of everything he intended. Elohim is completely congruent. There's no hypocrisy. There's no deviation. Elohim in verse 24 is the fullness of the embodiment of what this is all about. And those who want to worship him need to worship him in that fullness and truth. Need to worship him in that fullness of how he intended it. And not the little piece here and a little piece there, and I like this part of Elohim, and I like this part of what he said, and I'll do this little piece here. But to be full, complete, from top to bottom to overflowing with him. Hopefully that makes more sense, right? Okay? We have language issues, though, because, see, in English it says, Elohim is spirit. Now, I can tell you that in languages, things that could sound very literal like that have so much more in it. Hebrew, absolutely. Okay? But like, give you an example. My mother-in-law, I would ask where my wife was. She would say, Julie's store. Now, I know what Julie's store meant. But if you just read that literally, what does it mean? Julie's a store? What does that mean? She said, Julie went to the store. She just said Julie's store. Because in her language, that's how you would say it, and you'd understand the rest of it. You don't need to put all those extra words, okay? Because it's already understood in the context. So when he says Elohim is spirit, he's saying, by definition, what Elohim is everything that I'm talking about, everything he's trying to do, he's the full embodiment of all of that. And if you want to worship him, you've got to take on all of that. Not partial, not filled up halfway, 3/4, 90%, not even 99%. Get filled up, get the rest of it out. And when you fall short, get on your knees, repent, teshuvah, start again.
I would just basically wanted to bring a comment that I had brought to the table last night. And you're more than welcome to obviously respond to it. But I was looking up in Genesis when it's talking about the Spirit of God moved on the surface of the water. In the Hebrew, it says, Ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. And spirit, and wind, moved of Elohim, moved on the surface of the water. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a strict reading of spirit in that sense and that passage, because the definite article that's always in every version I've ever read is not actually there in that verse.
And thank you for that comment. It has nothing to do with what we're teaching, but I appreciate that. I'm just teasing him. I covered that in the Ruach teaching, that the word Ruach doesn't always refer to the Spirit the way we do it. But think of it this way, though, which is what I said to you last night. The intrinsic nature in the creation process, at the very beginning of it, hovered over the whole earth so that the earth would be designed, built for his nature. The nature of Elohim, okay? It's his nature that was brought into the first steps of the creation process, okay? Because when you read in Genesis, okay, right at the very beginning, it says, and the earth had become formless and empty. It was tohu v'bohu. He says, and then the nature of Elohim was moving over the face of the waters, and that's when the process begins with let there be light. His nature, because this place is here as a place for his nature to be walked, his nature to be lived. And so I'm good with that translation as well. All right? If you want to just translate it wind, I think that does a disservice to what I think was going on. I think in this case, he had brought into a place of chaos and confusion his nature. What is his nature? Order. There's no confusion. I did not give you the spirit of fear and confusion, etc., but that of a sound mind. Order. Organization. It doesn't sound like anything was very organized and structured previous to this hovering of the Spirit and bringing order into that chaos. Do you follow that? It's his nature to bring order. It's his nature to, and by the way, what's the very first thing he does? He brings light. It's his nature to enlighten and to bring light. That's why we did a teaching called Yeshua, the light of the world, because that light is before day 4 when there's actually a sun and a moon and stars. So here you've got light being brought into darkness. There was darkness on the face of the earth, and he brings, by his nature brings light. So maybe it's worth asking the question for me to share that, okay? But that's what's going on here in chapter 1, right there at the very beginning. Out of confusion and chaos. Is that not your life? Out of confusion and chaos and darkness, he brought his nature, which brought light. Amen. Amen. Okay, we're done. Oh, I forgot my coin. Do it again. Okay, we gotta do it again. No, I'm kidding. I got Manny waving his in front of me, reminding me I didn't have mine. Meanwhile, of course, the camera stayed away from you, Manny, until we got to see it. All right, Shabbat Shalom.